Hello and good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome everybody back to tonight's episode of Album Rant. And as you can see right there from the image in front of you, I am once again going to talk about the one and only godfather of shock rock, Alice Cooper. Yes, that Alice Cooper. And it's actually been a while since I've talked about him, actually. I think it's been over a year, actually. Wow, boy, how time flies. But given the time of the year, I thought it would be most appropriate to talk about their fifth studio released in 1972, entitled School's Out. And that, again, is the vinyl right there, and that is the album cover. Well, anyways, in case this is the first time you've ever heard me talk about Alice on this channel, I'm going to kind of go backwards in time a little bit and kind of explain to you how we got here. But Alice Cooper, his name isn't actually Alice Cooper. Yeah, no big surprise. His real name is actually Vincent Fournier. I think I said that correctly, and if I'm mispronouncing it, I'm sure you will correct me. But initially, he was part of the high school cross-country team, and he was actually a pretty talented runner. I think I read somewhere he won a 4:29 mile, which is very impressive, especially at that age level and for the time, actually. But anyways, in 1964, himself and a couple other members of the cross-country team decided to sign up for the school talent show. And what their big gimmick was at the talent show was they were going to parody a bunch of Beatles songs, who were very, very popular at the time. Again, this was 1964. And he had a couple of other guys with him. One of them was by the name of Glen Buxton. And he was actually the only one in the group who could actually play an instrument. So basically all the other people in the group, or all the other guys in the group, they just kind of mimed along and just pretended to play. Kind of the equivalent of lip syncing, I guess, so that's actually kind of funny. But then they decided to take off, and they decided to actually get serious about their music, and they actually went through a ton of name changes. At one point, they were the Spiders, another point, they were the Nazz, but eventually in 1968, they changed the band name to Alice Cooper. And the lead singer, Vincent Fournier, kind of adopted the stage name Alice Cooper. You confused yet? It's okay. But essentially, Fournier, aka Alice Cooper, believed that the band needed a gimmick to really set themselves apart from all the other acts out there. You know, kind of like how Kiss parades around on stage in makeup and they breathe fire and spit blood and fly out into the audience. That kind of gimmick. Or King Diamond, constantly obsessed with Satan. So there we go. So there were a few lineup changes throughout those early years, but eventually the stable lineup and the classic lineup became Alice Cooper on lead vocals, Glen Buxton on lead guitar, Michael Bruce on lead guitar, Dennis Dunaway on bass guitar, and Neal Smith on the drums. And all of these guys, except for Neal Smith, had gone to the local high school and were on the cross-country team. So that's actually a pretty interesting story. But they had very, not so great success in their early years. They were bouncing from gig to gig and never really got a whole lot of attention. And to be honest, I really doubt they were that good back then. But there was one night they had a very unsuccessful gig, and the entire place cleared out after 10 minutes. They just couldn't take it anymore, so that's kind of sad but funny at the same time. But there was a music manager in the audience, and he thought that they could take the negative perception of the band and convert that into a positive perception of the band. And he arranged for them to actually audition for the one and only Frank Zappa. And I am not making this up. Apparently, they were told to go to his house at 7 p.m. Well, the band thought that they meant 7 a.m. I mean, they were athletes, so they're probably used to waking up early. And so they showed up at his house at 7 a.m. and started playing out in his yard, and they eventually woke him up. And instead of calling the police, he signed them to a record contract, and the rest is history. So, anyways, they, in 1969, yes, goes back that far. The band released their very first album entitled Pretty's For You, and it's good for what it is, I'll say that. It is by no means up to the level of classic Alice Cooper, but it is a fun listen. It was really more akin to the likes of Pink Floyd, and it sounded very, very psychedelic. And of course, it got very negative reviews. One reviewer actually called it, and viewer discretion advised coming up, it was called psychedelic shit. Well, that did not stop them, because in the year 1970, the exact same lineup recorded another album by the title of Easy Action. And it was pretty well in line with what Pretty's For You was. It was more quote-unquote psychedelic shit. So it sounded like they were not really off to a very good start. Now, I know those first two albums got very negative reviews, but I do think they are worth a listen. I think, if anything, it's a very interesting and insightful glance into the band before they really got popular. However, in 1971, they joined forces with a producer by the name of Bob Ezrin. Yes, that Bob Ezrin, who is also very well known for his work with Pink Floyd, with Aerosmith, with Kiss, and Deep Purple. Nowadays, he's highly collaborative with Deep Purple. And he kind of got them to streamline their approach a little bit. And he definitely encouraged them to start composing concept albums where every little song kind of flowed into the next one, and it all built into a grand unifying theme. And well, it worked, because in 1971, they released their third studio release, and this is where they really took off. It was called Love It to Death. And it had the classic, I'm 18 or just 18. You know, that 18. I'm 18 and I like it. And that was not the only great song off of there. We also had Is It My Body? We had Caught in a Dream. We had A Long Way to Go. We had the mighty, the very Doors-inspired or Doors-reminiscent Black Juju. We had Hallowed Be Thy Name. We had Second Coming. We had the Ballad of Dwight Fry, which was a pretty bizarre number, all things considered. And we had a cover of Sunrise, which I actually really, really love, okay? I think that's a great cover. It's very catchy. It's got a great beat to it. It's highly underrated, so I think you do need to check that out if you have not heard it. And so they bounced right back the same year. Later that year, they released their fourth studio album, which I have reviewed before on Album Rant, and it was just entitled Killer. And they had more of their greatest hits on that album, such as Under My Wheels, such as Be My Lover, or Desperado, or the progressive Halo of Flies, or You Drive Me Nervous, or Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. Then we had Dead Babies, and of course, the title track. And so it was a very, very great album, very progressive, but also very theatrical. Something I did mention on that episode of Album Rant is that Alice Cooper was very highly influenced by Broadway, and you could kind of tell some of the influences were apparent on the Killer album. And I did allude to this, but the song Halo of Flies, there's a segment within it that kind of sounds like my favorite things from Sound of Music. Yes, you would not think those two compositions would go very well together, but it worked. But anyways, it seemed that at the time they could do no wrong. They had two very powerful and very successful albums behind them, and two not so great, albeit very interesting albums before that. But in 1972, they released their fifth studio release, and that is going to bring me to where I am right now, and it was entitled School's Out. And this was also a concept album, and from what I understand, it was about the perils of teenage youth and teenage angst and the struggle for one to find themselves and their path in life after they graduate from high school. That's a very definite struggle that many people face, and it's definitely a hard time of life, so I can kind of respect that. Now, let's see what's inside. Oh, yeah, this one's a little bit awkward. This one actually flips up. So right there, looks like we have a picture of the band. This is an original press, by the way, which is why it has such bad sleeve conditions. So you're gonna have to kind of work with me here. But there's the band right there, looking great. Here is an advertisement from the record company for some other albums that have come out, and they're trying to get people to go out and check those out, such as Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones, Deja Vu by Crosby, Still, Nash and Young. I think Fragile by Yes is in here. Yeah, it is. Yes Songs is. And, we got some more back there as well. Okay, so what we have here, we have some more artwork on the back. Looks like we have a door. Okay, so do we have a track list here? We kind of have one I'm getting all messed up here. Kind of right there, but it's out of order, so I'm going to have to kind of go with the record here. I'm going to use the record as a track list, so sorry if this looks a little bit awkward, but it's really the best I can do with what I have to work with. So here is the record, and it all starts out with the anthemic title track. Yes, we have heard this many, many times. Comes on the radio often, and it has been permanently ingrained into our pop culture. School's out, or school's out for summer. And this one comes out swinging right out of the gate. It really sounds a lot like a garage rock song, and you know the riff. Do-na-no, do-na-no, do-na-no-no-no. And Alice comes in, and he is just rocking out. His vocalizations are very strong, very powerful on this, and we all know the incredibly iconic chorus, "School's out for summer." And this is just a song that the name just says it all. It's about teenage youth and rebellion, and it is such a great anthem. And yes, in the middle we have the no more teachers, no more books, or no more classes, no more books, no more teachers, dirty looks. I think I said that correctly. I probably messed up. It's all right though. And then at the end, it's like, school's out completely. And then we have what sounds like a bell ringing for the end of the day, and it just segues or kind of fades out, and it is a very, very strong opener. I have seen Alice Cooper twice in concert. Once in 2012, actually opening up from Iron Maiden, and then once in 2021 with Ace Frehley from Kiss. And of course, he played School's Out both times. Why would he not? That is what everybody wants to hear, and, well, I'm no exception. And yes, you can believe that I was going nuts and having a great time with it. When I first got into Alice Cooper, it was my freshman year of high school, and my mom and my little brother also got into Alice Cooper along with me, and this was a song that we all really, really loved, and so it really means a lot to me because it signifies and represents a time in my life that I really enjoyed. So that right there was the title track, School's Out, which was written by Alice, Michael Bruce, Glen Buxton, Dennis Dunaway, and Neal Smith, the entire band right there. So then it's going to go into the second track entitled Looney Tune. And this one is a lot slower. It's like do-no-no, do-no-no-no, do-no-no. It's very slow and very brooding. We have I slipped into my jeans, lean hard and feeling mean. I took a spit at the moon. It's all about this Looney Tune. And I think it's really great for what it is. Is it as great as the title track? Probably not quite, but I think it is a pretty strong number. It's fairly heavy, maybe not as heavy as the title track, but I still think it's pretty decent. But yes, the title track was very electric, very hard-hitting. This one is slightly softer, but again, it's more brooding and slow, but that's not a bad thing, and it's definitely setting the atmosphere. Something I really respect about Alice Cooper is much like, much like Queen, and maybe Pink Floyd to an extent, they didn't do the exact same thing every song. He definitely taps into other genres and other styles of music, which I can respect, but having said that, there are going to be some things that work very well for me and some things that don't. But again, this sounds a lot different from the title track, but I still really love it. However, then we go into the third song, which is Gutter Cat vs. the Jets. And it looks like this was written by Glen Buxton and Dennis Dunaway, with a slight contribution from the composer of West Side Story, which I will get to in just a second. I really love Gutter Cats vs. the Jets. Starts out with a bass intro, doom, 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 and it's, again, kind of setting the mood. It's very soft and very dark in a way, but then the bass just starts picking up. It's like doom, 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 and then it just starts picking up. It starts getting very progressive, and the band comes in one member at a time until it just starts exploding, and it gets really, really fast, which I love. It's like, I met an alley cat, pussyfooting around till the break of dawn, found me knocked out flat on my head. Some feline beauty waved her tail my way, I just had to stay. I couldn't get the blood off my hands. She made my eyes bug out, her tail stand up, and I ate in heat for a month, and I really love it. And so it does that a couple of times, but then after that, after maybe a couple of verse-chorus arrangements, it starts to change gear. It starts to go off in a different direction, which I actually really like. It gets really fast, and it really starts picking up. And the very end, I really love the very end. It's kind of like, the Jets are in gear, they're always well respected, you're never alone, when company's expected, you're well projected. Here come the Jets like a bat out of hell, someone gets on our way, someone don't feel so well. When you're a Jet, you stay a Jet. And I did the very best I could right there, but it's all right. And what's also going on with that little arrangement is we actually have the theme from what I believe from West Side Story, and it accompanies the song so well. Now, I have never actually seen West Side Story. Broadway really isn't my thing for the most part. Alice is a huge fan of it, but me not so much. But all I gotta say is it just accompanies the song so well and really lends itself to it very well. And then at the very end, we have that rah, and then it goes straight into the fourth track, which is called Street Fight. It is a 55-second instrumental. It's, again, very fast, and there's some sound effects in the background. It sounds like someone's in an alley or something. And then it just kind of fades out. So, pretty decent instrumental doodle for all things considered. However, we then come to the fifth song, which is called Blue Turk. And I'm not so sure how I feel about this one. I said before, what Alice does often is he goes into other genres of music, and I do respect him trying to do different things and everything, but this one is a lot slower and jazzier. It's got a bass intro of like do 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 do, and it kind of never really gets kicked up into high gear the way some of these other songs did. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out here who really love Blue Turk. But for me personally, it's not exactly what I pick up an Alice Cooper album for. But I, again, acknowledge that they've got all these different segments and all these different movements within this underlying concept. And he's trying to take you through all these different moods and everything. So I understand why he did a jazz number, but it's, again, not exactly my style of music. But yeah, there is some saxophone in the background, which could really work, but again, jazz music, but what are you going to do? It's still a great side, but my favorite from side one is definitely number 3, Gutter Cat vs. the Jets. So let's flip it over. We are now going to go to side number 2. And here we are. And the very first song from side number 2 is My Stars. And this actually has a piano intro. Interesting, I'll give them that. And again, this one also feels a lot more like a Broadway number than maybe a rock song. Or let me back up. It does feel like a Broadway number, but it also feels like a rock song. They kind of combine those two genres together, those two styles together. And I think it works actually pretty well, believe it or not. I mean, the piano plays for a little bit, and the band comes in, and the piano plays for a little bit. And it's the kind of song that just keeps building and building upon itself. and I like it. It's pretty heavy also, despite the piano. He did play this the second time I saw him, and I had a great time with it, I'll say that. So yeah, My Stars, great song. So the second track from side 2, the 7th track overall, is Public Animal number 9. And again, this also has a Broadway feel to it, but at the same time, like I said, it also feels like 50s or 60s rock and roll music, which I also think is pretty interesting. But it's got this hey, hey, hey thing going on, and again, that really lends itself to the overall mood and feel of the song, and I think it goes very well. There is a lot of guitar in this song, which is great. It's heavy, and it definitely gives the song the punch that maybe some of his other music does not have. But yeah, I do like Public Animal number 9. However, we now come to Alma Mater. Now, I have looked this song up on YouTube. I looked in the comments. I wanted to see what other people had to say about it. It was overwhelmingly positive. That is awesome, okay? However, it's not exactly my favorite. I know I'm going to get some disagreement here, but that's fine, okay? Just go at it. But there's always a moment, and I've said this many times, within an Alice Cooper album where things kind of go off the rails. And relatively speaking, Schools Out does not go off the rails that much, at least in comparison to other albums like Welcome to My Nightmare. However, this is still the moment where it goes off the rail. This one is kind of bizarre, and it's also kind of soft and kind of eerie, I guess. Maybe eerie is not the right word, but it's definitely a weird song, and unfortunately, weird can be good. Alice has pulled off weird many, many times and it's worked very well. I don't think he quite did it as well as other moments on Schools Out, and Alma Mater is probably one of the weaker songs on here. It's still great, still a great atmosphere, just it does not work for me the way some of his other stuff does. But hey, remember the Coop, right? So, yeah, it actually goes on quite for a while. I think this one was written by Neal Smith. Am I correct? Yes, I was. And, again, part of it almost feels like cowboy music, actually. I might be the only person who thinks that, but it's all right. But I'm guessing this is about how, again, we're out of high school and we're going off into life to find our own way. But fortunately, things end very strongly with the last track, which is kind of throwing everything together and bringing everything back to the beginning. This is Grand Finale, and it is an instrumental. Now, there is actually an orchestra, what sounds like a brass orchestra behind this, and it does work pretty well, okay? This thing kind of moves and flows from one segment to the next, and again, the orchestra is really the driving force behind it, but it's a pretty good song. It's a pretty good outro as well. And we also have the keyboards go along with it, and just the keyboards and that brass orchestra, when combined together, I think it really does produce something pretty well, or pretty amazing. But then at the end, once again, we're going to have a reprise of Gutter Cat vs. the Jets, or as I should say, a reprise of West Side Story, because we once again have that theme, and then it just ends. We once again does that yah thing that he did at the end of Gutter Cat vs. the Jets, and then the album is over, and that was it. That was the grand finale. So what is my favorite from side number 2? I think I'm going with Public Animal number 9. Now let me be clear, there is not a single weak song from Schools Out. Just again, this is a very diverse album. Most Alice Cooper albums are very diverse, so there are going to be some that people are going to like more than others, and Public Animal number 9 is just my favorite. So let's try to reinsert this back in. This is going to be a challenge. I always struggle with this. So that goes in there, and then this goes back here. And I did my best. So anyways, that is going to conclude my review of Schools Out, and I hope everybody has a great summer. But going forward, I'm going to have to make some changes, so have a very pleasant evening and a very eventful summer.